Good morning, good morning. We're not quite live. Good morning. I'll keep saying it. There we go. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, good morning, good morning. And we are live. Yes, we are. I don't know if we've got anybody signed up yet, Kris. We may be a little bit early, but I'm just going to keep talking anyway. So, first of all, this morning, I would like to say good morning, as always. Excuse me, to my spirit guide Gradle, who is, as always, to my right side. And Kris, I'd like to say good morning to you too in Vermont. How are you?
I'm great, Rosemary. Good morning. Good morning to everyone.
So, do we have anybody yet, or is it a little early?
I think they're just logging on now.
Oh, good. Okay. Well, let's chat for a little bit then before I start my story this morning. Because, when people come on for story time and then they miss the beginning, they often don't know what the story is about at all, in fact. So, what have you been up to this week, Kris?
Well, today is Moonlight Graham, my no longer kitty, but now a cat's birthday, his first birthday. So I
Oh,
gave him a can of cat food this morning with a candle in it and sang him happy birthday.
did you really?
I did.
Well, why wasn't I included? You should have called me. We could have sung happy birthday together.
I probably should have.
Yeah, you should have. Don't be so remiss again.
We can do it again later. Maybe not with a can of
Oh,
cat
yeah,
food, though.
yeah. We could do it later, couldn't we? Um, so a year, a year old today. Wow, and it's the date is October the 2nd, and this month is sort of well, when we think of October, what do we think of? We think of Halloween, don't we?
Yes, we do.
Are there any other things that we think about for October?
We think
I've got
of leaf peeping.
leaf peeping. A lot of people don't know what leaf peeping is. If they're around the world, if somebody in India or China would absolutely not know what leaf peeping is. Do you want to explain that, Kris?
It's essentially in any area where there are the beautiful, colorful leaves on trees. So, especially where I live in the northeast of the United States.
Well, I think Vermont is known for its leaf peeping.
Yes, I think you'll get areas of Colorado too, though, with the aspens, and obviously New Hampshire and
Oh,
Maine, also,
right.
Western Massachusetts, the Adirondacks in New York. Anyway, um, especially the maples and the birch and those types of trees just turn these fabulous golds and reds and oranges, and so whole mountainsides transform in color, and people just go to the back roads and they take drives, so that's where the peeping comes in, and pull offs with picnics and snap pictures and just really
I
enjoy
think
the outdoors.
I think when you think about Vermont, there are lots of mountains. It's quite a mountainous area, not like the mountains of Colorado by any means, but nevertheless, there are lots of mountains and masses of trees. And years ago, Vermont was known for its growing its apples and so on. And it's also known for its maple and maple syrup. And Vermont maple syrup is quite famous throughout the world. So you have a lot of those maple trees around that you just talked about. And so when you're driving along, you could sort of, you're driving sort of from town to town. Some of the roads are country roads, some of them are bigger, heavier roads. But it doesn't matter where you drive through, there are mountains surrounding you in Vermont. And when it's this time of year, and it must be spectacular right now, um, when it's this time of year, especially the first and second week, it doesn't last very long. It's the whole mountainside, you get whole mountainsides, mountains and mountains and mountains, and you get whole mountainsides that are so filled with the most spectacular colour. And what I love most of all is when the sun is shining and you're driving through and the mountainside is filled with reds and golds and uh, oranges, and it's really, really incredible. And the sun is shining, and the sun often shines through the leaves, so it's almost as if the whole mountainside becomes this fluorescent color with the sun shining behind the coloured leaves. It's all, oh, it's unbelievable. And then you can literally, and I've seen this happen, and I know this happens, you can be, one day you can be driving along and it's spectacular and beautiful, and you go to bed at night and then there's a storm through the night, and the next morning you wake up and there's barely a leaf on a tree, right, Kris? Everything goes from spectacular to what they call stick season, which is nothing. Well, actually, yeah, stick season. There's nothing. All the leaves are off the trees, and all the trees, you're just left with sticks sticking out from the trees. It's amazing to see it. So if you are inclined to take a drive up to Vermont, those of you who've never seen this before, you need to be thinking of going within the next 10 days, because overnight it can be gone like that and you'll miss it, right, Kris?
Yeah, and that reminds me of the newsletter that we just sent out, Rosemary, about changes of seasons. Did you
Oh
want to talk
yes.
about that?
No.
Okay.
Well,
If you've
actually,
missed the newsletter, you really need to sign up, and maybe we can give it to you another way by emailing the office.
yeah, we did have, or should I say, I had an amazing experience. I always try to write a little something for the newsletter before it goes out. It might be a little story, or it could be some inspiration or something or another. But um, the other day when I was writing for the newsletter, for this month's newsletter, Grey Eagle sat by my side, and we were talking about change and changing seasons. Talking about the summer, how the summer's gone, and now it's the fall foliage, or as we say in England, autumn is upon us, and so. And Grey Eagle was talking about this, and he actually gave a phenomenal. It's actually a paragraph. It's a passage that you, when you read it, it's I think it's really inspirational. One of the really great things about that also was that as Greg was talking to me, I saw Chris's husband Mike, who was standing very quietly by Gregel's side, listening and nodding and agreeing with the fact that that the seasons of we have many seasons within our lifetime. We have winters, we have summers, we have spring. Throughout our lives, we have many seasons, and winter, autumn, or fall, as you would say in America. The autumn is upon us, and when we think of the autumn of our lives, many people actually think of the autumn of our lives being our age. The spring is when we're young, the summer is when we're in full bloom, etc., etc. And then as we get into the autumn of our lives, that basically we sort of recognize that as when we're getting older. And then the winter of our lives is when we become old and decrepit. And I must tell you a story that Reese told me the other day. But anyway, in a minute, I'll tell you that story. So remind me, Kris.
Okay.
But Grey Eagle was not talking about the seasons in our lives in the same way at all. He was talking about the seasons as we grow, as we learn, as we develop. And at the age of 20, we can have a winter. Even at the age of 5, we can have a winter and a summer and a spring. Winter depicts the coldness and the loneliness and the heartaches that we suffer, and we can have those things at any age. The summertime is when we are blooming, and again, we can go from winter to summer, but we don't have to go necessarily through the winter, spring, summer, that sort of thing. But the summer, as Grey Eagle described it in this beautiful paragraph that he gave to me, the summer is when we are blooming, and again, we could be any age, and a person of 80 or 90 can be in absolute full glorious bloom, sort of going against the idea that they're in the winter of their years. So we are, and as Gregor is showing us, and it's in the newsletter this month, he's showing us that we as human beings go through different seasons at different times in our lives, and that we deal with them. Different people deal with those seasons differently. Somebody asked me, I think it was this Thursday, somebody asked a question about the soul, and was trying to compare one dreaming soul with another dreaming soul, and how do they compare? And we were talking about the fact that the soul, from the moment of its conception, is changing and growing. And change and growth doesn't mean necessarily, wonderful and happy. Change and growth come from pain. Change and growth come from trauma. Change and growth come also from joy. So when Gregor is talking about the seasons of our lives, it makes absolute and perfect sense. And he tells us that no matter what, that the inevitability is that spring is always coming. So even when we are at our worst and our most depressed and most desperate, spring inevitably eventually will come to us. So very interesting. And I know, Kris, that your husband Mike, I know for all of you out there who've lost somebody, it's in one way it seems unfair, because Kris has got you've got a little heads up on everybody else, haven't you? But at
I'm
the
very
same
fortunate
time,
that I'm working with you. Yes.
but at the same time, Kris, if anybody's going to get special privileges, it should be you, because without you and the work that you do, we wouldn't be sitting here doing this. So anyway, so Mike was wanting to give that message specifically and particularly to Kris, that spring is coming, even though it might feel like the winter season, emotionally, spiritually, physically, in every way, especially when we are grieving, uh, especially when we are thrust into the changes of life without having any expectation that something awful is going to happen. We are thrust into the winter of our emotions, and we're thrust into the coldness and the loneliness and the heartache, which is, winter, if you like. But we know that even in the winter months, there are some incredible and beautiful things that we can see. So even in our most darkest and most desperate times, there is beauty if we can open our eyes and look for it. So anyway, so that was the theme of the newsletter this week. And really, if you want to hear Gregor, or you want to know what Gregor has to say, sometimes you really need to hotfoot to the website, which is rosemaryaltea.com. Is it, Kris? Yes.
Yes.
rosemaryaltea.com, and go to the website, and there's a little thing there. There's a little button. You all know it's there. Subscribe. It says subscribe. It doesn't cost you anything. And unlike many people, we only send out maybe 2 or 3 emails a month, one of those being the newsletter. But if you haven't subscribed, you won't get the newsletter. And so, so you're missing out. So also the newsletter tells us what's coming up. So Kris, what's coming up before I go into my story? Yes, because after all, it is Saturday morning, it is story time, right? So
yeah, did you want to talk about Reese? You mentioned Reese told you something?
Oh, well, talking about winter and so on and so forth, and the seasons, yes. So my darling grandson, 8 years old, okay, so he says to me the other day, he's been going to school, obviously, he's been going to school now for the last couple of weeks. And he said to me, Mosey, did you know that my school is older than you? Sorry, I'm laughing when I say this. Did you know that our school is older than you? He says it with such a serious face. I said, I didn't know that. How old is your school? He said, it's It's 120 years old. So I said, wow, well, I suppose that's a lot older than me, right? He said, yes. And it was the way that he was saying it was, can you believe that there's something or someone older than you, Mosey? Anyway, so, so he tells me this, and then he goes on to tell me that they're renovating the school. They're doing some renovations because it's old and it's crumbly. I said, do you mean old and crumbly like me? And he said, well, not as old and, well, you're not as old and crumbly as the school. Implying that I am a little bit old and crumbly. But anyway, we remember this is coming from an 8-year-old. So he said, so they're renovating. And I said to him, darling, do you think that Mosey should have some renovation? He looked at me, and you see he was looking at me to see if I did need any renovation. And then he said, no, Mosey, you're old, but you don't need any renovation. You are just lovely as you are.
Oh my.
So, out of the mouths of babes, I was compared to a 120-year-old building this week. Anyway, so Kris, is there anything else that we can share that people who didn't get the newsletter would like to know about? I know we're going to be talking about the month of October. We talked about Halloween. You talked about the fall foliage. It's also the time, isn't it, when people are going apple picking, hay rides, sort of they have in Vermont. I don't know if they do it anywhere else. They probably do it all over the world, actually, when I think about it. But in Vermont, they have these farms that put out these enormous pumpkins. And of course, we love pumpkin carving. And for those of you who don't know what that is, well, you have to look it up on Google because we don't have time to explain it all. But pumpkin carving, Samantha used to love pumpkin carving. Reese loves pumpkin carving, and we put candles inside the pumpkin. So they have these places where you can go, and they have scarecrows, and they have sort of scenes with haystacks and chickens and stuff like that. And there's apple picking and
corn mazes.
Pardon?
Corn mazes.
Corn mazes, yes, and they have all that coloured corn as well, don't they? That is it Indian maize they call it, I think. Anyway, they have all of that, but so we thought that we would take October, and I can't take you apple picking. Although I'd love to, I'd love to take you all apple picking with me, but I can't take you apple picking. And I can't take you to the farm, but what I thought I could do, yes, we're not quite sure how it's going to work out, are we, Kris? But we are going to be doing not on Halloween, but on the Friday before. Halloween is on Sunday, I think, this year, Sunday the 31st. So on the 29th, which is Friday, on Friday night. Now, for those of you in England, it will be the witching hour. Kris said to me the other day, what's the witching hour? And I'm thinking, how can you people not know what the witching hour is? 12 o'clock midnight is the witching hour. So for those of you in England, it will be perhaps past the witching hour. Anyway, between 7 and 9 o'clock on Friday night before Halloween, we thought we'd have fun. We want to just have fun with everybody. We've made it as accessible to everybody as we possibly can. You need to, if you want to join me, you really need to book your tickets because we could sell out really fast because we're only allowed so many tickets. We do have to make charge a small fee, but we've made it a really small fee. Kris will tell me I don't have to justify that. But I just want you to know it is affordable for everybody because we just want everybody to join in. And let me see. We might make toffee apples. Have you ever had toffee apples, Kris?
Oh, it's been many years.
Oh, well, we're looking at the fall. We're looking at fall foliage, we're looking at the spooky stuff. And I thought that even though we can't do this on Sunday for Halloween because Kris is busy, I thought we could have a story time and I could tell you some ghost stories, true ghost stories. You know, I don't believe in ghosts, so I'm not quite sure how that works out. But when I was young, of course, I believed in ghosts. We all believed in ghosts. Now I see it as very differently. But I thought that we would tell some spooky stories, some unexplained stories, some eerie stories, something. How does that happen? And what happens when you do this? Or what happens when you see a light coming at you, a spooky, ghostly light? What is that? And I thought we'd have some ghost stories. And if you have a ghost story, any of you, we'd love it if you email us, Kris, Kris, at rosemaryaltea.com, and share your ghost story with us. But the only thing is, it has to be true story. We're not doing anything that isn't true. So if you have a spooky ghost story that you would like to share with us, by all means, write it in our email. And if it's good enough, and if we have time, which of course we can make time, hey, we'll tell your spooky ghost story as well as a few of mine. So it is Saturday morning, right? So before we go any further, before we take any of your comments or questions, and I know that some of you have lots of them, but before we do that, it is Once Upon a Time time. So once upon a time, remember it's October, so we're sort of, going the little bit of a spooky route. So once upon a time, and there was a girl, and she was very scared, very nervous of the dark. She didn't like the dark at all. And every night, when she came home from school, of course, it would be dark by 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Every time when she came home from school, she would get to the house, but if there were no lights on in the house, she would just walk around and around the block and around another block and around again. Sometimes she might have to walk for quite some time before the lights were on in the house, but she wouldn't dare go into the house unless she saw that somebody else was in the house. She was terrified to go into the house by herself. One particular of these many, many, many occasions that she would wait until somebody was home. It was raining, it was winter, it was freezing cold, as it often was. Even so, even though it was pouring with rain and she was absolutely soaked through to the skin, as she got up to the house, there was not a light on in the place. It was dark and she knew that there was nobody home. And rather than go in by herself, she walked around the block. And then she walked around the block again. And then she walked around the block again. But on this particular occasion, it was so freezing and she was so drenched because it was torrential rain that eventually she couldn't stand outside any longer. So she went into the house, and sure enough, no one was home. No one was in the house. It was dark. It was quiet. And it felt to her very, very spooky. She took off her coat and her shoes and she dried herself with a towel and she went and sat in the living room. But she was shaking like a leaf and she was terrified. Because of course, as she sat there, they would come. And she knew that they would come, which was why she tried so hard to wait for somebody else to turn on the lights, why she tried very hard to wait for somebody else to be in the house, so she wouldn't have to sit there all by herself and listen to them. She sat in the armchair by the fire, which was not lit. There was no light, no warmth. The house was freezing cold. She sat there And sure enough, they came. She couldn't stop them. She didn't know how to stop them. And they came and they tapped on the walls and they called her name and they whispered and whispered. And the more she sat there, the louder the noises got and the louder the whispers became and the more terrified she became, till she was shrinking back in the chair with her eyes closed, praying and praying and praying for somebody, anybody, to come through the door, to one of her family to come through the door. For some reason on this occasion, she was so terrified. She dare not open her eyes. She was curled up in the chair and she dare not peek and she dare not listen. And then she felt a hand on her face and someone blowing in her ear. Cold air rushed all across her face. She shivered and she shook. And the breath on her face became stronger and stronger, and the whispers became louder and louder until she thought that she would have to run screaming, screaming from the house and into the rain again. And then the back door opened and someone called, "Is anybody here?" And they disappeared. It was quiet again. She still sat in the chair, trembling and frightened, not knowing what to do, and knowing that if she said anything, her family would look at her like she was crazy, because they knew, in fact, that she was. And she believed that she was. How come when somebody else came into the house, the voices would stop? How come when somebody else came into the house, it felt warmer? How come when somebody else came into the house, the cold on her face disappeared? How come when somebody else came into the house, everything went back to normal? It was only when she got older that she realized that everybody's normal is different. Her normal was different. Her normal was that they would come and they would whisper to her and scare the pants off her sometimes. They would whisper to her and let her know that they were around her. I'm sure not realizing that she was absolutely terrified. On this particular night, she felt the hand, cold, cold hand on her face, stroking her face, and she felt the icy wind blowing across her face. She was petrified. Was she really crazy? She now knows, of course, that the hand stroking her face and the cold wind blowing across her was meant to comfort her. The end.
Well, we could hear a pin drop after that one, Rosemary. Woo! How
So
old
there
was
you have
that
it.
young girl at that time?
Sorry?
How old was that young girl at that
Oh
time?
gosh, I mean, it happened so many times, but on that particular occasion, you know why I remember that so vividly is because I had a raincoat. Now, then you're going to think I'm weird about this, but my two older sisters, I was the middle sister, my two older sisters were much taller than me. I was the very teeny tiny skinny one, and um, I would always get the hand-me-downs. Obviously, you know, the older sister and then the next sister and then me. And often my older sister, we would get hand-me-downs from other people that my mother worked with or knew. So we rarely had any new clothes. But this particular hand-me-down was a raincoat. And I don't know if anybody else has uh, done this, but you know, sometimes you can look back and in your mind's eye, you can see how you were. You can actually see a picture of yourself and you can see how you looked on certain occasions. On this particular occasion, I was wearing this raincoat, which was a hand-me-down. It was a navy blue raincoat. I'm sure it was very nice quality. It was double-breasted, but the sleeves came sort of, here's my, wait a minute, here's my fingertip there, and the sleeves came sort of like, wait a minute, I can't get my hands right here. We had to, my mother had to turn them under quite a bit and then turn them under again quite a bit. And they actually were turned up so that the turn was under my armpits. The cuffs
Wow.
of the sleeve were literally under my armpits. And I'm not exaggerating when I say this. So the coat itself was huge and it had a belt. So in order for it not to drag on the floor, my mother used to cinch the thing in the middle of the raincoat to tighten it up. So when I wore this raincoat, which was often, I had to wear it every day. I had to wear it every day to school. I had to wear it. It was my winter coat. It was the only one I had. But my arms would be out like this because I wouldn't be able to close my arms to my side because the sleeves were all bunched up underneath. And I have this odd sort of image of myself, and this is a true image. The school that I was at the time, a junior school that I was at, had high railings, big high metal railings. I can remember standing at the railings wearing this coat, sort of I must have looked like a scarecrow because it was all tied in the middle and sort of, you know, sort of, I mean, it was ridiculous. How I must have looked was ridiculous, but I had to wear this thing every day. And I remember sort of having this image, this picture of myself standing at the railings wearing this coat, sort of looking out at the bars, waiting for my older sister to pick me up from school, and sort of, you know, wearing this awful thing, this awful coat. But anyway, why I'm telling you this is ridiculous. But at the same time, it was like this little Victorian wave. Not that I'm that old, but you know what I'm saying, Kris, when you see these kids who, you know, they don't have decent shoes, or they're wearing shoes that are too big for them or too small for them. And there was no need for us to, we were not poor, we were not rich, but we were not poor. My father was in the army and my mother worked all the time. We you know, we had beautiful furniture and fitted carpets in our house. We had decorators in every year, which was totally different than any other person in our neighborhood. So it wasn't like they couldn't afford a coat to fit me. It was just that, oh, this will do. So, you know, that was it. So for all of my childhood, I was odd. I being the odd one out, always looking like the odd one. And let me tell you, in that raincoat, I definitely looked like the odd one. But always also, which made me much more odd, certainly not normal in my family, was the fact that whenever I was alone in the house, I was absolutely terrified because when I say they would come. We know who they are, don't we? We know that whoever it is from the spirit world is letting you know. And I think there are other people who have these experiences. And especially as children, we're much more sensitive and much more aware. So I could tell you that on this particular day, wearing probably the same raincoat as, as I'd been wearing 10 years before, which now fit me. I don't know if that's true, but I remember, you know, I probably was about 11 or 12 or something. I had to walk home from school, which was quite a way. and in the pouring rain and no umbrella, and you get home and your shoes are soaked and you've soaked to the skin, and uh, but the I think the the thing that I suppose one of the things I'm trying to get across here is that I was so terrified that I would rather keep walking in the rain and the snow and the ice, whatever it was. I would rather do that and be freezing, freezing cold than dare to go into the house and have those spooky experiences. Anyway, that's one of my little stories. We're going to tell more spooky stories uh, on Friday, the 29th. So join me then. And if you've got any spooky stories, please share them with us. All right, Kris, I'm done.
All
Let's.
right. Well, Carolyn's asking, why didn't the spirit world realize they were scaring you?
Oh, I mean, maybe some of them might have done, or maybe they just look. I was this little waif, this little, I mean, I did not have a great childhood, and I could imagine that there were people in the spirit world who were so concerned for me to let me know, look, hey, you're not on your own. you know you're not buried in a raincoat. We see you. We see you. We know you. We hear you. And you know, perhaps if I'd have been able to say to them, as I can now, because when it happens now, if I'm spooked or scared, and one of the stories I'm going to tell you is about waking up in the middle of the night. Oh, I'm not going to tell you.
I was
Oh,
just going to
God.
say, stop there. Hold the suspense.
Yeah, I'm going to stop there. But now, if something happens that is terrifying or spooky, I can do something about it. I know what to do, and I know to say, "Hey." And when Samantha was scared, and maybe one or two of the stories I tell will be about Samantha's spooky experiences as well, and I would say to whoever it was in the spirit world, "You need to stop because you're frightening her, or you're frightening me, so you need to stop." And then it stops. But I think at that time I lived in an extremely dysfunctional household. My mother was a venomous person. She hated my father, and when I say hated, I mean serious hatred, venomous hatred. She hated him. He had, I don't think he hated her. I think he just didn't know what to do with her. Um, we lived in an extremely dysfunctional family, and the beatings were common. Not so much for my siblings, and can't speak to my brothers; they were much older, but certainly my sisters. If anybody was going to get the beatings, it was 99% me. I'm sure there was 1% where we all got a good clouting. But when I'm talking about a beating, I'm talking about real beatings. Um, and my sisters, years later, after we were all grown up, actually were talking about this, and they knew and were accepting and declaring that, yeah, she, meaning me, she got the worst of it. Thank God I wasn't you, sort of thing. So since that time, they've all, because you also think, if you're the one who's picked on, if you're the kid in the family who nobody likes, you think, you've got to think to yourself, maybe it's me, maybe my perception is skewed, or maybe I'm just feeling sorry for myself. But then when your siblings say, no, no, you really got it bad, they all were thrilled that they weren't me. So I think at the time, when those in the spirit world made themselves known, or tried to make themselves known to me, they were desperately trying to tell me, we see you and we're here with you, and uh, didn't stop the scariness and the spookiness, though. Anyway, Kris.
That just makes me think, Rosemary. I mean, here you are, let's say a 12-year-old child who thinks they're crazy. The family's got a history of grandmother having episodes.
Well, I was told by my mother very, very regularly that I'd end up in the towers like my grandmother. So I didn't just think I was crazy. Let's be clear about this, Kris. I didn't think I was crazy. I knew, because when you're told something often enough, you believe it. I knew that I was like my grandmother, who on a regular basis ended up in a psychiatric hospital. At the time, my mother used to threaten me, you'll end up in the towers. I didn't know what the towers was, but I knew it was somewhere I didn't want to be. And I was told on a regular basis that I was crazy. So why would you not believe that?
So what about the first moment when you suddenly realized you weren't crazy, that you actually were speaking to people who had passed, and this was your, I'm calling it now, gift to the world? You might not have seen it that way, but this was your contribution to the world. What about that moment, the transition? Can you remember that?
Um, it had to do with my father. Um, yes, maybe that's another story for another day.
Okay.
So if you make a little note of my father and Mick Maguire, and I'll know that when that let's say that moment of revelation, if somebody else can do it, if because I kept it a secret for so long until my early 30s. I kept it such a secret, and then all of a sudden there's somebody else doing similar, and you think, wait a minute, it, wait a minute, if he can do it, maybe I'm not crazy. Maybe it's real. Yeah, so we can tell that story another time. Anyway,
All
comments
right.
and questions.
So most of the comments started off because we were talking about fall and leaf peeping. So Judith contributed her list of what she thinks about for October, which is pumpkin pie, leaf raking, pulling out winter clothes, and bonfires.
Oh yes, bonfires. Well, of course, in England we have Guy Fawkes Night as well, where we all have bonfires. And maybe I'll tell a story about Guy Fawkes as well another Saturday morning, because that's an interesting thing that we Brits do, but nobody seems to know in America what Guy Fawkes Night is. Of course, Guy Fawkes was a British politician that tried to blow up the Houses of Parliament, so we celebrate that, being British, don't we? We stick him on the bonfire and we burn him. that's 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 what we do, and then we celebrate. We cook potatoes in the fire, and we have toffee apples, and we have parties. And anyway, the Brits are a very macabre race sometimes, and I'm all for it personally. But yeah, I mean, there are lots of different celebrations, and people celebrate different things throughout the winter months.
Well, Rhonda's talking about leaf peeping is in full swing in Colorado, and Maggie's talking about Michigan, and she feels as though the New England colors are muted as compared to the higher northern states,
Oh, really?
where the colors are magnificent.
Wow.
Magnificent.
Well, I would love to see that if that's the case, because I've only experienced leaf peeping in Vermont, but if those colours are muted, wow, I'm amazed. I would never consider them to be muted. Anyway, keep going.
All right. Fernanda wants to know, do you have any idea when the world will go back to normal without COVID?
It is back to normal, my darling. This is how it is. You know, before uh, before we discovered influenza, I mean, influenza used to kill, very often used to kill. We have influenza now. It's perfectly normal. Nobody thinks twice about it. Nobody blinks at it. We have, the scientists have developed, I mean, you would think, wouldn't you, that there would be a cure for the common cold, but do you know that there is not a cure for the common cold? That, no matter what medicines you take, you can relieve it, you make it feel better, you make yourself feel better, but you have to let it go through your system. It's normal. And COVID is simply one of those things that has come upon us, and we shall live with it, and it's normal. This is our new normal. The thing is, when are we going to stop being afraid of it? When are we going to understand that it is not as terrifying as the politicians are trying to make out? Because it isn't. Remember, you see, I come from a place where I do not believe that you can die before your time. You can get sick. I've been sick throughout my lifetime. I've been extremely sick throughout my lifetime. Many of you have been sick throughout your lifetime. We survive it. We maybe don't like it, but we survive it. And as we go through life, we'll survive things like COVID, and there'll be other things that come at us. This is life. This is normal. This is nature. This is, this is about our life here on this earth. There is never a time, there's never been a moment on this earth when we haven't had something awful to deal with, some disease or some catastrophe or some earthquake or whatever it is. There's never been a moment on this earth when we haven't had to deal with something or another that is traumatic to us and potentially life-threatening to us. So this is just another normal. Kris.
Judith is saying that in the North Georgia mountains, it's also beautiful with the leaves.
Okay. All right then. Let's move on beyond the full foliage.
All right. Fernanda says, I think my pet dog Peggy came to visit me today.
Oh, nice. Very nice. Well, thank you for sharing that. And I hope you said hello, and I hope you acknowledged, because, I just told that, it is a spooky story. When you're 12 years old, let me tell you, it's really, really spooky. When you're experiencing it, it's definitely spooky. But the more you know about this stuff, the more you realize that if you acknowledge what's going on, instead of running away from it, instead of being afraid and running from it, which is pretty much everything in life that we have to experience, if we face it and we face it head on and we deal with it head on, then it's not nearly as frightening and not nearly as scary. If you say hello to those in the spirit world, they'll stop tapping you on the shoulder because they'll know, hey, she heard us. When I say they'll stop tapping on the shoulder, they'll do it in a different way, in perhaps in a less spooky way. When you acknowledge that you hear them, or when you acknowledge that they're around, or when you acknowledge that you know that they're with you, the whole communication becomes very different. Kris.
Eric says, I've been thinking about coming to Gray Eagle's campfire all these past weeks, about people coming and going, about being welcomed and getting what they need. Some add to the fire, some warm themselves. All are welcome. Some go on, like what is happening in my life now. People coming in, people going on.
Well, thank you for that, my lovely. It is, I know that Gregor talks about the campfire, come sit at my campfire. Some are welcome just to come and warm themselves. They don't have to give anything. They can warm themselves. They take from the fire what they need and then they move on. Others come and they sit and they bring kindling. They build the fire. They help the fire. In that way, Kris is one of those who definitely keeps putting kindling on the fire, making sure that the fire is burning brightly. Because what Kris does is she plans and she organizes and she gets things going. And for instance, our Halloween night, our spooky story nights, that's all Kris. And she sat for hours yesterday sorting it out, getting it put up in the right places, getting the links done, and so on. So she is a typically, you don't mind if I talk about it if you're not listening to me, do you, Kris? But Kris is a typical person who not only, I mean, she definitely sits at the campfire, I shouldn't speak for you, so I don't know if you get warmed by it or you get comfort from it. So I'm not going to speak to that. If you want to speak to that, that's up to you. But um, definitely, you keep bringing kindling and keep that fire going for us, so that we can get on and do what we need to do and to share what we have with other people.
Well, thank you for that. I don't know, this just comes naturally to me, and it just seems like what I need to do, what I have to do. It's I must. That's all I can say. Um, because we're 10 minutes before the program ends, I want to mention also, you're going to be doing the bottom brick exercise, and this is coming on October 20th at 5 p.m. And Cheryl, who also happens to be in our chat room today, has volunteered to be the person doing this with you.
Hi, Cheryl.
Um, so do you want to just speak about the bottom brick exercise at all and what people can expect if they show up that
I
night
think
and
that
watch?
I think that if you want to know more about the bottom brick exercise, and everybody should, because it's an exercise that every single one of us can do, and I've done it with my students again and again and again, many, many times. It is such an enlightening thing to do, and it's such a powerful thing to do if you sort of do it properly. And when you begin it, you start and you're honest about your feelings and you're honest about your memories and so on. It can be really a revelation to you, an inspiration, and it can. It's an exercise that literally can help you to understand why you feel the way you do, why you think the way you do. It helps you to understand where your insecurities have come from. And it also helps you to understand that there's no need for those insecurities whatsoever. So it's a brilliant exercise. And if you go to our website, you can actually see. I don't know how many of the bottom brickers are there, but you can actually go and see the bottom brickers. Or if you go on YouTube, I think you can go, and we've done 4 public bottom brick exercises, which means we've had 4 volunteers so far. And we did this through the month of May because remember, this year we're still celebrating the 25th anniversary of my first book, my New York Times bestseller, The Eagle and the Rose, and it's 25 years this year that we're celebrating that. So, you know, if you, I think you can go to YouTube and see it, and you can see some of the exercises and how they work. And so we are collecting bottom brickers. If you want to volunteer for the bottom brick exercise, you can do. Or if you'd like to do it privately with me on your own, then we can also arrange for you to do that privately. But if you want to do it and volunteer, we'll do it for you for free. And the cost to you, Cheryl, the cost to you is that you're going to be seen and heard. And I think you're going to be able to inspire a great many people by doing this exercise. And I'm hoping that it will inspire you too and clear up a lot of the stuff that's going on in your head right now. So thank you for volunteering. We appreciate that. Kris.
All right. So then we have a number of people who are saying hello. We have people from Colombia and Italy and many places in the United States. So
Okay.
too many names to read. Let's see.
Just remember, okay, if you are thinking of you want to join in our our Halloween thing, 7 o'clock here, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Oh gosh, so we're starting at 7 o'clock, which means in England it's going to be the witching hour, 12 o'clock, 12 o'clock midnight. So you can, come on, stay up. It's Halloween. And it's Friday night, so hopefully most of you won't have to go to work the next morning. In Italy, I think it's an hour further on, so it would be 1 o'clock in the morning. Not so bad. So we're trying to do it at a time when it's available. And in Australia, I think it's sort of sometime in the next morning. So I know sort of. So you get in Australia getting and New Zealand, you're getting a little bit closer to the actual Halloween date. But you can all join in, which is why we chose 7 o'clock. So it's 7 till 9. And, sort of, if you, again, let me remind you, you must, hot foot to the website and click, and it'll show you how to buy your ticket, which is a very, very, we're doing this as a special. We're doing this because we just want to have fun on Halloween. And we're doing this because, well, why wouldn't we do it? It's, why not? Let's have a really spooky, spooky time. Kris.
I can't wait. Yeah, so we don't really have any other questions. I mean, we're 4 minutes away from the close. But I know you're also going to be doing either a recipe or a cooking show this month, and that
Oh,
if
yes.
people go to your website, there's a calendar up that you can print out yourself so you know what's happening.
Yes, I'm going to show you how to make a Yorkshire pudding. I can hear you all from England now saying, oh, come on, really? We all know how to make Yorkshire pudding. Yes, but that's because you're in England and we are the Yorkshire pudding champions. But we love Yorkshire puddings. They have something here in the States called a popover, I think it's called. Not the same, not at all the same. Let me tell you. So, so anyway, I'm going to be showing you how to make Yorkshire puddings, what to put in them, how you can make them sweet or savoury, and all of that stuff. So we're going to be planning one of our cooking shows, possibly, it depends on Kris and what time Kris has got here, but possibly on a Sunday morning we're going to be doing that. And we'll let you have all of the ingredients beforehand so that you too can cook along with me. I made, oh gosh, yesterday I made some absolutely delicious ginger chicken wings, and they were so good. And I thought to myself at some point, I should be doing this. I should have been doing this on video so you know how to make these chicken wings. But anyway, there we have it. I did send a picture to Kris. I don't know if she's going to send it out to you so you can see what they look like. What they look like is delicious. What they taste like is better than delicious. So we're going to be doing lots of things. So if you would like to know more about us, you can either email us, rosemary@rosemaryaLtea.com, or if you really wanted to get there quickly, Kris, Kris, because she's going to deal with them anyway, Kris, Kris@rosemaryaLtea.com. You can email us. Email us your spooky story if you have one. They have to be true, though. You can't do it if it's not true. Or you can go to the website and check out the spooky webinar and, sort of click on subscribe if you want the newsletter. It doesn't cost you anything. It's just one email a month. That's all we'll send you for the newsletter. And maybe a couple of other emails. We will not inundate you with emails, I promise you. But what Gregor did say about the seasons was really, I think, really remarkable and inspirational. As he always says, he just gives us such wisdom and such insights into things. So, all right. So that's it for today. So I'd like to say thank you to Kris, especially this morning. I'd like to say thank you to my spirit guide, Grey Eagle, who, as we all know, thank goodness he's here with us. And I would like to say thank you to all of you for watching. We should be back next Thursday morning for the Spirit World Seesaw. That's 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, the same time as you joined in for this morning. And we'll be doing some off the cuffs. We're definitely going to do at least one off the cuff, so watch for that. And again, if you subscribe, then you'll be notified. It'll just come up a little flash on your phone or something, Rosemary Altea live, and you can click on it and watch or not, or you can join in or not. We're also going to be inviting people to come on. Anybody who wants to say anything, we've already had an invitation put out to our wonderful friend Jeff. So if you want to join in the off the cuff, we're going to be arranging that as well. All sorts of things we're going to be doing. So until I see you again, we'll be back next Saturday morning with another story time. And this month is spooky month. So I'm going to be titillating you. We're going to be showing you, of course, from the person who does not believe in ghosts, me, we're going to be telling you ghost stories. So, but on Friday night, spooky Friday night, we're going to just all sit down. It's going to be like sitting around the fire and really telling some good stuff. That's what we're going to be doing. So until I see you all again, please, everybody, have a very blessed rest of the day and have a very blessed weekend, everybody. Bye-bye.